Good afternoon and welcome back to this afternoon's segment of ICE365 Live. My name is Katie Goldfinch and I am your eyes and ears of ICE London 2022. What a roaring start the show has gotten off to. There was a Royal Orchestra playing here this morning, and we've had fantastic interviews here at ICE365 Live with industry thought leaders. And kicking off this afternoon's segment, we are talking Latam headlines, and I'm joined in the studio by a very special guest. We have Augustine Sykes, co-founder and COO of Latam Media Group. Hello, Augustine.
Hi, how are you, Kate?
I'm very well, thank you.
It's a real pleasure to be here with you.
Yeah, good to have you
it
here.
is. Yeah.
Good to be in London, I propose.
It's the best, one of the best events in the world. So we are really happy with Clarion, with all what they've done with this amazing show, but with the city. We love London, so we are really happy.
And you were saying to me before the interview that this is your 6th ICE London, is that right?
Yeah, my first time was in 2017, so I came here 18, 19, 20. Unfortunately, we couldn't do it in 2021 due to COVID, but we are here now. That's the most important thing.
Brilliant, and great to have you. So tell us a bit about Latam Media Group.
Well, Latam Media Group is a media company. We are based in Argentina, but we work in all Latin America. We own a betting magazine. It's a online betting focused magazine that we distribute in all the main trade shows in Latin America, in Peru, in Argentina, in Colombia. So that gives us a continuous feedback with the community, with the Latin American community, and thanks to that, to our social networks and through our website, we built a very nice and strong community in the region, so we can help those companies from Europe or the US or Asia that can come to the region, make them understand how to work in Latin America, that it's not easy, that all the countries are different, that we don't need to think in Latin America as a whole region, because, for example, in Brazil you speak Portuguese, but in the rest of Latin America you speak in Spanish. So there are lots of things that you need to take in account when you want to, if you are really interested and want to work in Latin America.
Mm-hmm. And tell us about the latest headlines that you've seen in your region lately.
Well, the good news is that, as you mentioned, or I mentioned COVID, that everything is starting again. So we are seeing each other we saw each other in Buenos Aires a few weeks ago, in Colombia. So everything, people are visiting our region. And there are very good news, for example, that Buenos Aires license has been granted, so now it's legal to bet on the most important province and city of Argentina. There's moving forward in Brazil with the law that passed the deputy of the chambers of deputy. So good things are happening. Colombia is the most settled country in the region. That it's more like it's around 5 years that is it has like a regular framework where it's legal to gamble under a federal law. So it's the most important region now in Latin America. Mexico is really big due to their population and because there are lots of very big operators. And the same in Colombia, in Peru, that they work under licenses. But again, Latin America overall is the region to see. And I think that the main operators and the providers and suppliers and everybody is looking there because we have a very nice years in the ones to come. So everything's great.
So thank you for telling us a little bit about what's going on in the territory. Is there anyone else competing in that territory? Any new contenders?
You mean in other countries that can be that are strong enough to? I think the ones that I mentioned are the ones that, well, as I said, Colombia is number one because they have like a solid framework. Brazil, due to their population and their interest, and well, we have World Cup in next November, so this will be huge for that country as well. Peru, even Chile shows like a very good expansion in the region. So those are the countries that can be. If you say contenders like other regions that can be an exponentially growth as Latin America, I don't think so. I think the next 5 years are for Latin America. But again, you need to do it like the companies need to do it consciously. It's not just to waste money and going on advertising or whatever. You need to go to Latin America. You need to visit the shows. You need to talk to the local operators per country. If not, effort won't be worth it.
Great, thank you. And so Argentina's approach to legislation is interesting. As it's developing on a province-by-province basis, does this set up local brands for success, depending on their presence in each province?
Yeah, let's see. Despite it's very recent, Argentina's situation looks good so far. It's important to say that online betting has been legal in several provinces for many years. Provinces like San Luis, Tucumán, or Misiones, among others, have been working online betting for several years, very good and responsibly. But of course that Argentina the eye is focused on Argentina now because both Buenos Aires, in Buenos Aires, both province and Ciudad de Buenos Aires has like 19 million people in their territory. So it's, of course, due to the population and for the brand awareness that the big companies want to achieve, I don't know, by sponsoring the main football teams of the region or putting advertising in media, in mainstream media, or even in the biggest newsletters, that makes that all the eyes are put on Argentina. They, I don't know how to say, but if they want to engage now, the Argentinian audience is the right moment because again, but the good thing as well is that the regulator settled that all those big companies that want to land in Argentina or in Buenos Aires specifically need to have a local operator, a local partner. So this is good because, as I was saying previously, the idiosyncrasy in Latin America and in Argentina specifically is really different from Europe or the US. So you need a local partner that knows the market, that knows the player, and despite most of these operators, these local partners, come from the land-based and retail industry, they are closer to the player. So I think it's a very interesting merge between that foreign company that is coming to the region and that local partner, because of course the foreign company knows about the platform, has the expertise of what worked in different countries, but the local partner knows the people, knows the country, and again about idiosyncrasy. That's really important, and it's something that I like to mention as well.
Thank you. And Buenos Aires, I know that you live there.
Yep.
Now, the city has just legalized online gambling. Have you had any feedback from the market? Has it got off to a good start?
No, yeah. As I was saying, it comes really good. Everything comes good because of this. Because I think it's not more than a year that companies are operating. So we don't know much about revenues, we don't know much about how this is going, but the experience is good because of this. 2 weeks ago we had Saxe Buenos Aires, the show in the Argentinian show, the main show. So and there was these operators that are investing in the region. That's very important for us. That all those investors that come to the region invest because you need events to be held. You have lots of things in the background that if you don't have the support of these big companies, it will be really tough to make it work. But I think the process started good, and it will be really beneficial for Argentina and for the region as well.
Brilliant. And Brazil is another interesting territory, isn't it? But the clock is ticking. If they're going to launch legal betting ahead of the World Cup, do you think there'll be any more delays on that?
Yeah, I think Brazil's expectations towards legislation are on the peak due to World Cup. It has a lot to do with this. Have in mind that Brazil won, if I don't remember wrong, 5 World Cups in their whole history. So for Brazilians, this competition is everything. They need to they live for this competition as we do, as Argentinians do. But unfortunately, we don't have. There are 5 World Cups. We just have 2. But this World Cup item that you say, I think it's not a minor detail for Tier 1 operators, because of course they assume the interest and the audience that the World Cup will have in the region. So I think the World Cup is really important, and of course they see the profitability that this can have for their operations, right? But what happened with Brazil is that we've had several backs and forwards during the year, during the last year. Sorry, nothing, and they could never regulate. But what happens in the last months? The chambers of deputies, sorry, they passed the law, and now it's all the Senate needs to approve this legislation. But the difference that I see now with the previous years is that perhaps there's a more solid plan to implement the law. For example, there's an idea of that Jogo do Bicho and lottery and sport betting should be regulated jurisdictionally, while casinos and bingos will be run under a federal law. So I think this is like a quick sum up of what's happening in Brazil. That the World Cup, of course, is really important. But yeah, there's a history behind this. Behind Brazil legislation that we all hope it will pass this time for sure.
And staying with Brazil, what do you think of the upcoming elections? And do you think that those might smooth the path to legal betting or make it more complex?
Well, I can say that everything in Latin America is always a bit complex.
Yeah.
Anything goes smoothly. But yeah, especially if you talk about finance, if you talk about politics, and if you talk about betting legislation. But well, I don't know. As a Latin American, this gives us a special power when we come to more settled countries, for example. That I don't know. We do like magic in places where you have a financial instability that's huge, where you have social problems. That social problems are more normal than, for example, in what happens in several countries in Europe or in US. But again, I think I can't honestly say what will happen with the election in Brazil, because Jair Bolsonaro, the president, publicly said that if it's necessary, he will veto the law, right? So the actual president is against the law, but if the main opponent of this president is Lula da Silva, the former president, who was the one who banned slot machines and bingos more than 10 years ago, you don't know what the big picture is. So again, it's tough to say, but well, let's go step by step. The good thing is that Chamber of Deputies passed the law, and let's hope that the Senate does the same. Yeah, we all want Brazil to legalize betting, because again, if it's not the most profitable country in the world, it's between the two or three, due to population, because they are sports fan, they enjoy casino, they have like a unique game called Jogo do Bicho, that it's similar to a bingo but with animals, and you need to bet. It has it's more than 100 years of history, this game, and it's in Brazilians' idiosyncrasy. So yeah, most of the regions in Latin America have this. We are really passionate. We like to bet, to be honest. So it's like the perfect mix.
That's brilliant that the upcoming elections could kind of catapult the industry in that region. So that's interesting.
Yeah, but again, I don't know. Well, I don't. That I don't know. It's not the main issue, you know. But again, Lula da Silva it was was very opposed to betting years ago. So we don't know. And you know, in politics, it's better not to not to mess around. So,
and as you said, step by step, day by day.
Yeah. In Latin, and that's I want to emphasize this. If you are a European or US company or Asian or whatever, and you think that by coming with a lot of money, you come to Latin Americans, they are all poor. They need money. No, you need to be in there. You need to know the people. You need to drink a beer at events. You know, because we don't do things like that. We talked with several clients that want to be in our company, in our media. And the first question that we say is, are you going to travel to Latin America and come to the events and do networking with the operators, with the regulators, with the supplier in the region? No, I just want to do brand awareness. No, then don't spend the money on us. That's true. And many of the people here can say that how it is, because we will make you lose money, because it doesn't work that way. So those companies that send emails trying to look at our platform, how it's the quickest, the cheapest, and gives the best revenue, no, that doesn't work. So yeah, but of course we are always at LMG. We are always looking and seeking the best way of those companies that want to come, that want to make businesses. We are like facilitators, introducing the right people, because a big industry or a big community works well when everybody puts something. In Spanish we say un granito de arena, like a small piece of sand. Like and in there we'll go and build the beach, because we are not fans of those companies that come to Latin America, don't spend money and take advantage of what the others build. So yeah, but again, we are here. We have like, I don't know, at least 5 years of big expansion in the region. There are the tier 1 operators are already looking with very good eyes. They also have their operations in Colombia, like William Hill, Betson, or Betfair. So we are here to help, and not as a company, but yeah, to bring the best community possible, because it's worth it. It's a pity if we don't build it and don't take this opportunity to take it to another level.
I like that, what you say about building community where everyone brings something to the table. That's really lovely to hear. So moving on to Colombia, Now, that's been up and running for a number of years now. Do you think that other countries see that as a sort of testing ground for regulation?
Yeah, if if you go to every event in Latin America, you will see always the same. Sorry, I check that.
That's okay.
It's you will see always the Colombian regulators, the Colombian operators, and they said or they say their experience to the whole region, and it's really good because they worked it very responsibly. It's working. Companies are with very good revenues. It's very good for the state, for the government. That of course they receive the like part of the revenues as it should be. That if you work under an unregulated market, the government doesn't have that opportunity of making good things as I don't know hospitals, what happens in Colombia. So it's something serious that I think most of the countries must have in consideration, because if you don't stop illegal gambling, the government loses a lot of money, and even the user. If you're a player and you bet on an illegal bookmaker or casino or whatever, you are not protected. You are not protected. So, having said all this, most of the countries are looking and trying to copy the Colombian model. For example, Argentina followed another model, but the thing is to hear, to learn, and see what's more convenient in each case. Well, as I said, Argentina has a jurisdictional law, like province by province, as it happens in the US, for example. Mexico grants licenses. Peru grants licenses as well. So yeah, the things in Colombia were really useful for the rest of the region. I know Colombia. I think they followed like the Spain model. So everything we need, it's like a Lego, you know. Everything need to build. We need to be together to build everything, because if you don't want to learn and you think that you know everything, that what you have is the only thing that's okay, in there I think we'll have problems.
Brilliant. Thank you for your time, Augustin.
Thank
Are
you.
you going to go and enjoy the show now?
Yeah, sure. We've been in Icebox. That the master classes are okay. So if you can go and visit, and yeah, of course, tons of stands and companies that make this amazing industry bigger and bigger every day.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for your time. A
Thanks
pleasure
to you,
to meet
Katie.
you, Augustin.
Pleasure. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you for joining us for that interview. Up next, we are going live to the show floor to see a tournament in the esports arena. Stay tuned for that.
And hello and welcome if you've just joined us on ICE Live 365. We're down here in the Esports arena. You can see the tournament and competitions taking place behind me. We'll come to that in a second, but I'm very pleased to be joined now by a man who's established himself as a strategic marketeer of note with a range of multi-billion-dollar businesses. Sony has built up a 25-year career around himself, building and implementing strategies that transform brands. For over half of that career, he's leveraged his corporate experience to drive growth in SMEs and early growth organizations. And Sonny, well, he's with us now. Welcome to ICE Live 365.
Thank you very much. You make me sound more impressive than I really am, but thank you. I like the introduction.
Whoever supplied the script, give them $1 million.
I will give them a very good bonus, trust me.
So, Sonny, thanks for joining us today. We'll talk about what's going on behind us in a second, but you've obviously held over the years quite a number of high-profile gambling jobs.
Yeah.
This is very different. It's esports. How did you get into this? What was the transformation for you?
It was an odd conversation that happened over some drinks, as the best conversations usually are, and I was approached to run an esports organization headquartered out of Hong Kong. Did a bit of due diligence, looked at the marketplace and turned the job down, but said, look, if you're not doing anything with it, I'll take it over. You could see very clearly, on this was about 4 years ago, that esports was going to be explosive. It had grown rapidly for the 10 years prior to that, but it was on the cusp of going, they call the hockey curve stick, where it just rockets sky high. And it just happened to be at that time, and I thought, this is too good to miss, an opportunity to miss.
So, oh, I'm awfully sorry. So talk us through then, you took over the organisation. There's lots of work to be done when that happens. How did you, first of all, do the taking over and then evolving that organisation?
Well, the first thing you do when you take over a business is just run through the weeds, see what's worth keeping, see what's worth divesting of. There were a couple of brands underneath the organisation, got rid of a few, focused on Vex Gaming. That had the community base, that had the fan base, that had the talent in there, and the idea was doubling down on that. Then it was about the strategic move. How do you stand out in a crowd which is growing so rapidly and there's a lot of noise? The reality is winning is hard, especially if you want to do it all the time. But what we have as a brand is a very big, powerful and loyal fan base, and they can be capitalized on through sponsorships and marketing. So it's being able to put together a strategy that enabled us to take the power of esports to brands who couldn't really tap into that marketplace.
And over that period of time, what would you say were the biggest humps in the road that you found?
Well, you don't take over a business 6 months before COVID lockdown, and that was our biggest hump. We were trying to go to the market for venture capital funding, literally as the markets all shut down. So to be really honest, what we've had to do is go and survive. We've been really lucky is that through a period of 2 years of companies going bankrupt and closing down, we've doubled our revenues. We've proven that we can engage with markets that brands like. We've got a brand that the audience like to engage with. Now the biggest hump is, how do we get investment into the business to take us from where we are to the next big stage, which is going to be a top 10 team in the world.
And we talk about the humps, obviously you have a great team with you as well.
We do indeed.
You know, that teamwork has paid dividends, hasn't it?
Oh God, completely. I mean, esports is, people think of esports as being quite insular and solo, but it's not. It's a team sport, both with the people who are playing together, but there's people who are supporting them in terms of the casting and the hosting, but behind the scenes, the marketing, the technology, the travel, the planning, all of that stuff comes into place. And I'm really proud to say that we've got a phenomenal team with Vex. They know what they're doing, but they're very passionate about what's going on.
It's great to see the tournament happening here, and I know you can play some risk-free bets over there, which we might do when we finish.
You should do.
But really,
always bet on red, that's Vex.
Oh, is that the best advice you can offer, Sonny? Good grief.
Yeah.
But how does gambling fit into the esports ecosystem?
I think there are two fundamental ways. The first thing is, the next audience for gambling are esports generation, the gaming generation. So you've got to reach out to them. So starting to get involved with esports and understanding that generation, how they talk to, how they engage with themselves is very important. Also getting your brand in front of them. Sponsoring teams like us and any other team helps you build a brand reputation with them. The second thing is, esports is becoming, well, it is the fastest growing sport on the planet. It is going to be a major contributor to revenues in sportsbook. There's no question about it. So getting involved early, cultivating that, and starting to build your proposition from the outset gives you the best proposition for a long-term gambling market.
And we're looking at that growth and the integration into the regular, let's call it the regular sporting calendar. Do you see that the esports calendar will be as big as and integrated with things like the Olympics and the World Cup?
Yeah, so we are very lucky that this year is the Commonwealth Games out of Birmingham. And so Team England is actually being managed by Vex Gaming. So our Chief Gaming Officer, Mark Weller, is going to be managing them. He also manages on his sideline Team Britain. Very, very busy man. But what you're starting to see by having esports coming into the Commonwealth Games, that's a forerunner for it being part of the Olympic Games. Now, if you were to look at traditional sports, if you look at the audience under about 27 to 30 years old, esports gets a significantly larger audience for that age group than traditional sports. So this is going to be the future. It probably won't compete head to head, but it will be absorbed into these type of larger organizations, and it will create a new paradigm for sports.
And that new paradigm, obviously, it's going at pace, but let's look at within the next 2 years. What do you see on the horizon? Crystal ball time.
The next 2 years, esports will be in the Olympics. That's probably 3 years, if I'm not mistaken. So 3 years, so forgive me on that one.
Close enough.
Close enough on that one. But it will be on broadcast media much more heavily. I think the gambling operators are going to start taking odds on certain tournaments in place. But what you're going to see is that it's actually going to move out of its core gaming base, and it's going to start building up a wider community of fans. I think that will start happening in the next 2 years. The other thing that's going to happen is that prize money is going to grow exponentially. There's going to be a huge boost in that, and what you're going to see is a larger, more traditional sports audience getting excited by esports.
Sonny, thank you very much indeed.
An absolute pleasure, Andy.
And my top tip today from Sonny, always bet on red.
Always bet on red. That's why, if you lose, please don't come looking for me.
Sonny, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Now look guys, for the latest on everything that's taking place, not just here in the esports arena, but also on the show floor for ICE London 2022, get online at ICE365.com and stand by here on ICE Live 365. We have Katie with the US headlines and market news in just a couple of seconds.
Fantastic to see some of the live action from the show floor there. Thank you for that, Andy. And welcome back into the studio. Up next, we are discussing the US headlines, and I'm joined in the studio by two guests. I have Brendan Bussman, the managing partner of B Global Advisors. Hello, welcome.
Glad to be here.
Glad to have you. And I have Brant Iden, the Director of Government Affairs at US Sport Radar. How are you both?
We're good.
Wonderful. How are you?
I'm good. The show's gotten off to a flying start. How is it feeling to you energy-wise? It's good energy out there, isn't it?
It's great to be back, first and foremost. It's been 2 long years, and it's good to see a lot of old friends, meet a lot of new ones, and get back after this.
I'm very excited to announce, Brent, this is my first ICE event. And, because formerly in my previous career, this always overlapped and I was never able to make it. And so, I think it's fantastic to see the excitement, the energy in the room, and I'm just happy to be here.
Well, we're glad you're here. And as I've told you the whole time, this is the only show that actually matters compared to everyone else out there.
That's right. You have told me that before.
Yes.
You have said that before.
Oh, wow. So it's your first ICE. That's exciting.
It is. It's very exciting.
So tell us about the US headlines. What headlines have stuck out to you both recently?
Well, I think obviously probably the first and foremost is the continued evolution of sports betting. I think that goes to a host of different markets that are looking at it today. You've got Kansas and Missouri that are debating which one's going to go first at this point in the race to get this done. You've got other states like Kentucky, but also you have mature markets like Michigan, where you legalized it, that has set the standard. So,
the U.S. is such an exciting market right now. 32 jurisdictions have now passed some sort of legislation pertaining to sports betting or iGaming. Certainly right now the excitement is with sports betting, but we've got to move more towards iCasino. The states know that's where the revenue is. Some of them have taken that leap, but I think that comes into play and it's part of the mix there. And, it's certainly a new market. It's got a lot of growth compared to Europe to go, but we're going to get there, and I think that the excitement continues to build in the U.S., and some states have done it better than others, which I know we could go on and on forever about, but it's taking those sort of positive models that we have seen across the country, trying to get those implemented in the remaining jurisdictions that have yet to pass some sort of whether retail, mobile, or otherwise.
Well, and as you talk about, obviously a lot of focus has been on sports and on online. Don't forget land.
That's right.
We still have had a couple of states, Georgia and Alabama, that have looked at it but didn't get quite down the way. You've got Nebraska that legalized land-based gaming at racetracks a year and a half ago. But probably the most exciting news came out of last week out of the state of New York, where the governor upped the timeline for 3 downstate casinos. So hopefully in the near future we'll see at hopefully a reasonable tax rate, not at a reasonable license fee, a casino in Midtown Manhattan.
I like that. It's sort of demonstrating your wants there. I like that.
Well, I mean, $500 million as a starting price for a license fee is a heck of a lot of money.
Wowee, that is. Absolutely. So it feels like the market at the moment is undergoing somewhat of a shift. Are operators now looking seriously at the cost of doing business in the US, do you think, to both of you?
Well, yeah, that's a really interesting question, right? I think what we have seen is that there's been, because it's been so new, the operators have been investing to try to gain market share and to try to gain those players. And so what you've seen the spend is on the marketing costs up front. It's been the marketing and acquisition costs that have really led the discussion. And I do think, again, now that we have 32 jurisdictions that have come online with something, right? I think that more operators are starting to take a look at, all right, we now need to pivot. We've started to gain that market share. How do we continue that, roll back some of the costs on the marketing side, and start to make, hopefully some profit?
Well, and obviously I think that's been the key and what has always driven this, but it goes to the basis of how you set up a market, because you have to make sure you have a reasonable tax rate, allow people to compete, allow that certain level of marketing deductions that are in play, so that you can gain market share, but that'll level out then at the end. But it also goes to how the model of the U.S. is different than anywhere else, because as we have the 32 that exist today with the eventual of probably 45 plus different markets that will, it's a different jurisdiction in each market. So you can't lay off bets along the way, where if you look at, a Super Bowl this year, and granted California will likely have it on the ballot, well, they will have it on the ballot this fall, how would you lay that bet off for something else when the Rams or somebody else are in a contest like that?
Makes sense.
So there's rampant speculation that traditional media giants are swooping in and buying the sports betting market up. What should people be looking out for that?
Well, I think one of the things that has been fascinating to me at this point is how quickly both media and teams have pivoted. If you go back, you're sitting here on the 4-year anniversary within a month here of the repeal of PASPA by the Supreme Court. And prior to that, you had teams that basically said, you owe us a fee for this, we don't want to do this, it's bad for the industry, whatever else. You also had media companies that wouldn't cover it because it was taboo. You can't turn on a broadcast on sports and not see the odds at this point. You've got teams in markets like Arizona, in other words, that have direct licenses to be able to do that. So there's definitely that convergence between media, sports, and gaming that's going to continue to happen. Where it evolves to is yet to be seen. But they all have an interest in making sure that they can deliver, and there's revenue opportunity for all of them in it.
Well, and I'll just expound upon that a little bit and say, what's different about the U.S. market, I think that we've seen than more mature market like we have over here, obviously, is that the leagues and teams have gotten involved to drive fan engagement. And that really has been part of the conversations. How do we it may not necessarily be about the big players. It may be about how do we drive more revenue dollars to the industry and to the teams and the leagues and others by virtue of getting more people involved. And that's why you're starting to see when you watch a game, you can't watch a game anymore without the odds coming up. I mean, it doesn't matter which channel you're on.
No, it doesn't at all. But I think that level of engagement is what continues to. And as I was talking with a group last week that works with teams directly on helping their revenue, if you're not part of that conversation right now, you are completely behind the 8 ball, because it's part of the conversation, because it's a revenue opportunity, it's an engagement opportunity, and it's the future of where things are going to keep that fan engaged in the experience.
And are either of you surprised about the movement that has taken place in that area so far, or whether it's too little or too much?
Well, I'm not going to say surprised. I'm going to say incredibly excited is the word that I'm going to use. What I love about it is the fact that this is what bringing more fans to the sport. I recently had a friend that I went out to Vegas with, and he had never placed a sports wager before, and it was only because he wasn't that interested in American football. Well, you know what? He put $20 on the game, and he sat there and watched the entire game. I use that as one small example of how many times I say this really does drive fan engagement. It really gets people involved, and it really brings a whole new level of excitement to sport that we haven't seen before. And so I think it's going fantastic.
Well, and I would agree with you that it is I'll call it even a pleasant surprise, because as I talk to people along the way about the evolution of how much they've engaged in so quickly, it has been one that I didn't think would transform as much as it has, but it's only the beginning of where things are to come.
That's right.
And being able to have, I can't think of a team I don't work with today that doesn't want a venue within their facility that's a cool, kick-ass lounge, whether they can have that be a direct sports book or if that's at a facility outside, but they want that level of engagement to have a cool experience for some of their fans.
And we started the year with a major market opening. In New York, they launched mobile betting. Do you think that 2022 has peaked early in terms of expansion opportunities? To you both?
No, here's what I will say. Here's what I will say. What's interesting about that, there's always usually a dip right after you get through American football. The Super Bowl, of course, is huge. Then you get into March Madness a little bit. There's always that February dip. So yes, did New York come out of the chute strong? Yes. Is it an incredibly high tax rate?
You don't even want to get me started on the tax rate.
You're right, I don't.
I mean,
you're right, I don't.
It's one of those that it's a crime to do business there. It's so high of a tax rate. But to your point, I mean, there's always an ebb and flow in sports as it comes. So New York obviously started out of the gate strong. Where I want to see where New York ends up is, let's see where they're at in September. Let's see where Jersey's numbers are at in September.
Sure.
Because you're going to see that balance, because you had a lot of people that went over to Jersey to place those bets. That'll start leveling out. But let's get a full season in. Let's see what it's like. But I mean, you're talking about one of the 4th largest markets in the country, just in sheer population.
But I'm going to predict something here. My prediction is that a rising tide lifts all ships, and you're going to see both players come up in New York. You're going to see players in New Jersey, and those numbers are not going to dip in New Jersey.
I don't think
now,
they are either.
I think you may see big players go back to find those better if there's better odds potentially over the river. But other than that, I think that you're going to see a lot of players come to the table.
You mean there might be better odds and a better tax rate?
I don't know.
friendlier to
That's just
business?
it's speculation. Pure
Speculation.
speculation
Okay.
at this point.
Oh, Brant and Brendan, thank you so much for your time. Tell us what you're excited about at the show. What are you going to see that you recommend others go and check out?
Well, I mean, as I said from the beginning, and I know this is your first show.
Yeah, there's a lot for me to see.
There is, I mean, there's a ton of opportunity here. And it just shows continually how much the industry advances from year to year, is how much technology plays into it, how much, you know, would go back here 5 years ago. The number of payment processors here today versus then is night and day. And so looking at all the various facets of technology, how it's being incorporated into the industry, you know, there's just a ton of it. So it's one of those, I always refer to this show as sensory overload, because there's so much to see and so much to do. And you really just need to take your time going, you know, row by row.
It's going to be exciting. I will just say that I am just looking forward to what's next. What's next for the industry? What's next that's out there? The things that I don't know about yet, here to learn. Really excited about.
Brant, get ready for a sensory overload.
All right.
You've heard it from Brendan himself. Thank you both for your time in the studio. Up next, we're going to the Consumer Protection Zone, CPZ. We'll see you shortly. Great. Hello viewers, we are now heading back out to the show floor to the Consumer Protection Zone. CPZ is a special part of ICE London that showcases new products and solutions, as well as discussions, presentations and speeches from those working to make the gambling industry safe and sustainable and to protect players from gambling harms. From its second year, it has also served as a fundraising opportunity, helping Clarion Gaming support charities and non-profits active in the sector. This year, CPZ is bigger and better than ever, and to date it has raised almost £150,000 for deserving causes. The area is now to serve making player protection an important feature of ICE London and the experience. Andy is over at CPZ now with Tim Miller, the Executive Director of the Gambling Commission, and also with the Gordon Moody Association, a long-standing CPZ exhibitor. Over to you, Andy.
Thank you, Katie. Yes, welcome back out to the show floor, and what a fantastic afternoon and day one this is really turning into. And I'm really pleased to be joined now by Tim Miller from the Gambling Commission. Tim, welcome to ICE Live 365.
Thanks, really great to be here.
It's good to have you here, and you're from the Gambling Commission. So we're down here in the Consumer Protection Zone. A great thing for this show, obviously. And do you think, though, as you're walking around and talking to people here, that the gambling industry has taken the right steps forward in its player protection over the last year or so?
Yeah, certainly we've seen some real positives. I mean, if you think of the context we're all working in, a pandemic had hit, no one really knew what that was going to do, and there were lots of fears that you'd see a sudden rise in problem gambling. People were at home, perhaps bored, perhaps getting involved with riskier products. And actually, we haven't seen that. We've been working really closely with the industry to make sure they understand the sort of things they need to do. And actually, all of the research we do shows that over the pandemic period, problem gambling hasn't risen. In fact, it's probably started to go down. So clearly, something is going right there.
And what's particularly impressed you then that the operators have done to make sure that wasn't the issue that everyone thought it might be?
I think most importantly, they've taken account of the guidance that we put out there fairly early on in the pandemic. We haven't seen examples of operators trying to perhaps exploit some of the opportunities that the pandemic may have presented. And we are seeing operators taking kind of more time now to try and understand how the pandemic was affecting changes in consumer behaviour and reacting to that. And I think that's a really positive sign.
And the innovation that's always going to flow from an industry like this, where do you think that innovation with respect to consumer protection has been coming from? Is it the operators or the suppliers?
I think interestingly it's perhaps not either of those. I mean, what we see increasingly is that there's voices outside of the industry altogether who are really seeing the opportunities to use technology, to use their skills to help the gambling industry make gambling safer. So, one example I give is the financial services industry, who now have been rolling out gambling blocks so that their customers can actually block gambling if they're finding it problematic. And I think the fact that those sort of sectors are willing to work with the gambling industry is a really positive change.
So looking at any action that needs to be taken, is there anything that strikes you as urgent action needed with the industry? Or how much further could and should the industry go in enhancing the safeguards that are in place as we speak now?
Yeah, so one of the things we're seeing as a regulator is that the sort of failings that we deal with, the breaches of our rules that we see, are time and time again the same issues, the same failings around not interacting properly with customers that are showing signs of harm, for example. So one of the things we will be doing later this week, most likely on Thursday, is announcing the outcome of a consultation we did to strengthen those rules. So we'll be setting out what obligations we expect operators to meet when interacting with customers so that they can spot the early signs of problem gambling and act quickly.
So we're down here in the Consumer Protection Zone. You've been here all day. What's really impressed you as you've been walking around and talking to people here?
So I think what's great is for those of us that are familiar with the Consumer Protection Zone, we've seen the journey that it's come on. 5 years or so ago, there was a conversation between us and Clarion about creating this space. And year on year, we've seen it grow, we've seen it get into a more prominent location. And this year, it just feels so different. It's a really open space. There are people all around us having conversations about protecting consumers. And I think huge credit needs to go to Clarion for giving up this space, particularly to Eva at Clarion, who's really been the driving force behind this. And, hopefully she'll appreciate the shout out for that.
Everyone likes a name check. Yeah. Now, obviously, you've been to other ICE events here at XL. What has struck you at this year's event as being a bit of a standout difference?
I think there's a different kind of tone to it. It feels more relaxed in a way, much more kind of open. It's certainly a bit quieter than previous years, but I think what that means is people are engaging in more conversations. You know, you can spend a bit more time looking at different things, talking to people. And I think given the kind of couple of years we've all had where, frankly, it's been hard to leave the house, having the opportunity to actually speak to real people in the flesh, you know, to not have to speak to your own family anymore has been fantastic.
Well, hopefully your wife isn't watching, but Tim, thank you very much for your time.
Pleasure, thanks a lot.
Okay, so there you have Tim Miller from the Gambling Commission. It's all go down here in the Consumer Protection Zone. There's lots taking place, so if you are watching this now live online, do get yourself down here to the XL. Because lots of great things taking place and really good information you can gain from coming down here. Now, another guy is coming for me now. Matthew Hickey, welcome to ICE Live 365.
Hi, thanks very much.
You're from the Gordon Moody Association, and for those that don't know, explain to me what that does.
So Gordon Moody is the residential treatment operation for those most affected by gambling addiction. So we treat both men and women from across the UK, here in our centres in London, in Manchester and Birmingham, and overcome their addiction issues.
And how are you funded? Where does the funding come from? This is great work you do, but where does that funding come from?
A bit of a mixed bag, to be honest. We get funding from Gamble Aware, who commission some of our services. We also in receipt of funding direct from the operators, and we do other charitable activities as well, which raise our funds.
So the help that you get from the industry then in supporting and to provide this very, very good help for people that need it and that have been affected by gambling harms, how do you put that to use?
That ranges from everything from enabling us to purchase properties right the way through to allowing the guys to be part of our Three Peaks Challenge that we've recently done, and everything in between, really.
So how else do you think the industry can support you further to help that great work that Gordon Moody does?
I think one of the key things that we've really got to do is collaborate more and more between ourselves on the treatment side, but also with the industry, so that we can get better understand where the touch points are and where the negative touch points are as well, so that we can help one another in overcoming addiction.
And looking at the gambling industry, do you think they've taken the right steps forward to help player protection and their efforts over the last year?
I mean, I've been involved now for 2 years at Gordon Moody, and I've seen such great transformation within the operators. The safer gambling messaging that they're doing, the responsible gambling activities that they're undertaking are all really big steps forward. I think there's still a lot more that we can all do, and we will get there, but, you know, one step at a time.
So those steps over the last 12 months, what's particularly impressed you that the industry has moved forward on?
Do you know, I think the change in the messaging around safer gambling has really risen the awareness that gambling and the addiction that comes with it, and more people are coming forward, which is only a good thing, so that we can treat these people that are suffering in silence. You know, gambling addiction is known as the hidden addiction because no one really pops up until they're really in crisis. And I think the messaging is really moving people forward and going, actually, I do have a problem and I can do something about it.
And if someone's watching this now and they think they may need to reach out to you guys at the Gordon Moody Association, how would they do that?
Firstly, pop online to our website. There's interactive chat going on there 24/7, 365 days a year. You can come in, you can talk to us. If you're right to come into us and have residential treatment, great. If not, we can refer you on to the right people as well.
Now, you're talking about the Three Peaks Challenge that's coming up. Are you still looking for people to do that to raise money?
Always looking for people to help us raise money. We're always in need of more so that we can treat more people. Simple as that.
Now, unfortunately, I've got a bit of a bad leg, so I won't be able to help you on the Three Peaks Challenge. Are you going to be doing it?
I've got gout, so no.
Well, it looks
it's
like
a middle-aged thing.
Thank you. Looks like we're both in the same boat, doesn't it? Matthew Hickey, thank you very much indeed. Look, Katie, it's back to you. Thanks for joining us here on the show floor. We'll have more for you tomorrow.
Thank you, Andy. Wonderful to hear what's going on down at the Consumer Protection Zone. I think I might sign myself up for the Three Peaks Challenge. So up next, we have a CEO question time. Keep watching to find out which CEO we have in the studio. Welcome back to CEO Question Time. I am joined in the studio by Charmaine Mabuza, the CEO of Ituba. Hello.
Hello, it's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Pleasure to have you. Thank you
Yes.
for coming.
Yes.
Obviously, the excitement of day one is underway. What are you looking forward to seeing at the show?
Well, I must tell you, I've seen quite a bit of innovation that has been going on. I was pretty surprised. It means that people didn't relax during COVID. They did some development. So there's been quite a bit of interest in terms of the new technology. And I'm just glad to reconnect with the various suppliers around here. So it has been absolutely lovely being back at ICE.
It seems everyone's very happy to be back in person, doing business to business, face to face.
Yes, I mean, virtual has got its space, it's got its time, but somewhere in between you need that human contact, and I think this was a good way of kickstarting that connectivity with people-to-people relationships.
So you've positioned Ituba as an innovator in the lottery sector. What in particular are you proud of?
Well, looking back, it's very difficult to say there's a particular one incident, but I can think of that we actually introduced the random numbers generator well in advance, I think in around 2017 when there was no issues of COVID and lockdown. So when lockdown happened, we were able to continue with our sales uninterrupted because many lotteries actually did not were able to sell during that period, and yet we continued to sell. So I think that was one strategic decision. And of course, one of the important things was introducing our app, and also, I mean, because once the retail sector was, disrupted, people could still turn to the app. But more importantly, I think the decision to decentralize our products and make our products available on many partners or third parties platforms helped us, and we saw enormous growth during that period, up to 40% in terms of e-commerce. So that was, for us, some of the things, I think, decisions that when looking back, I'm extremely proud of.
So 40%, that's quite significant. Do you think those numbers will retain, or do you think they might dwindle now that everyone's sort of going back to life after COVID?
I think they are going to return because I think the younger generation is now embraced it, and they've come to their stage of their lives where they're economically active. So I think that we've seen those numbers really retain, hold their fort, even though activities are going back to normal. Remember that we used to term it the millennials or the Generation X. Those are now very active in the economy, and they prefer technology than the traditional retailer, outlets.
So ease of access seems to be a key priority. What are you doing to ensure lottery products are readily available for customers?
Well, that was something I'm very passionate about. I think South Africa is one of the first, if not the only lottery that actually enables its players to purchase the lottery while they're doing their banking, their day-to-day banking. And this, you can recall that people used to buy the lottery through when they buy their bread and butter, the bread and milk on a daily basis. Then they will purchase a ticket. Now, the same customers or the new younger customers purchase their lottery when they're doing their banking or paying their bills or buying airtime. So the decentralization of our products, making sure that they're on third party, has been an excellent investment, and access is very important for us.
And as the 7th anniversary of Ituba's national lottery contract approaches, how are you looking to build on your tenure?
Well, firstly, I am not shy to claim that we have built a very good reputation for being operationally efficient, and we would like to leverage on that. And I mean, all our stakeholders will understand how much time and investment that we've put in the past 7 years, and our reputation really speaks for itself. And we're looking forward to new game innovations, because this is where our focus is going, so that it keeps satisfying our players. They are always pushing for higher jackpots, new games, and that's where our energy is focused on in the next coming time.
So a little glance into the future there. What else is next for Ituba? Are you looking to expand into other markets, perhaps?
Well, I'm loving that question because for us, growth has become very organic. As I was saying to you, our reputation has really stood us in good stead. And so jurisdictions are coming to us and say, can we copy your model? Can you share your model? So Ituba is growing along in many other African jurisdictions and in many other, that's our first focus because we understand the DNA, we know how to localize our products, we know how to work in that environment. So growth into Africa and other jurisdictions is very important to us. And watch that space.
I like that. Watch the space. So the Zamani Group, though its betting, gaming and technology arms seem to be building up an array of assets for expansion into new markets, what are you planning?
Certainly, for us, we've seen the test in the economy during this past pandemic. So we have to regroup in terms of our strategy, building up assets in sports betting, in lottery, in other online solutions and online casinos. As our private equity fund, we are just focused. We want to become a gaming kind of specialist because that's where we're good in. That's what we're good at. And that's our path that we really want to chart forward. We've put in a roadmap to achieve it. We've seen the growth has paid off for us, and so we're very happy with that.
Now, we know, Charmaine, that giving back is very important to you. Tell us a bit about that.
Yes, it's a subject that's very close to my heart. I myself come from an environment which was, terribly in need, so I understand, what it means to give back. For instance, I'm giving an example. We've engaged on a huge project, but partly I believe that the communities that we serve really start owning our brand because they kind of agree with the values that we push as Ituba. So our program of giving back is enormous, not only to our partners or stakeholders that we work with. We build up their businesses in terms of enterprises, our suppliers, we ensure that there's sustainability, but we also do social economic programs that make a difference in our community. And when Ituba comes along, people own it. It's a people's lottery. It's a people's company. And I think for me, that has been the biggest gratification I would ever have, because the ethos that we've built within the company, everyone embraces it. Everyone relates to these things that we do in making the difference in the communities that we serve.
It sounds like you've really adopted that ethos and sort of spread that through the company. Has that been easy to do?
Well, I must tell you that I think when somebody enters your home and they see this is how you do things, they adjust. It may not be easy, but everybody understands that for us, Ubuntu, the culture of humanity is extremely important to as an organization. We practice that in-house. We also practice that even externally. We give our resourcing teams extensive training so that they understand that philosophy. And it was not easy, but it can be easy if you set your mind to it. And all your evaluations center around our values as an organization. Even our performance indicators talk to the values of the organization.
Brilliant. Great work you're doing. And you were named one of IGB's most influential women last year. Congratulations.
Thank you.
How does that make you feel? Were you aware that was going to happen? Tell us about that moment.
Wow, I must tell you I was not aware. It took me by surprise myself, but I must say I'm humbled and absolutely show gratitude that somebody acknowledges our work and the kind of work that we have done. So I must tell you it was a big surprise, but this is not my award only. It belongs to my team, the team that really make it happen for us. And they are there all the time supporting me and making sure that the leadership in our organization really achieves its objective. So I must say I'm humbled on that part.
And what about opportunities for women in the gambling industry? Do you think there are enough opportunities granted to women?
Well, there is definitely room for improvement, I can assure you, and that comes in to us as operators because middle management needs to make a concerted effort. They need to put it down as a target to ensure that there's diversity and women are represented in leadership so that they can progress to leadership at a higher level. But I see that some people ignore that. Some organizations don't take heed around that matter. For instance, in my organization, there's more than 65% of women that work in executive leadership positions. So we practice what we preach, and I think that women bring a beautiful flair. There's that nurturing flair, and they're perfectionists. So I really applaud other CEOs to give women an opportunity. And as for us as women who are in leaders, if somebody gave us that break, we must give somebody else that break, especially if it's a woman that can take that baton and grow also in their individual careers.
65%, that's quite a big population there of women. Has it always been a high population of females working at the company?
Well, I must tell you that for me, it has not been an easy task. It's a concerted task. I mean, I think about it and make it sure that if there's any interviews, how are women represented in that space. It's not been easy because women have also shied away over, time. Not much opportunities was given. I talk for myself. It's been very difficult to be the only woman sitting around the table and negotiating. But I think if you really want something, if you really are committed to it, you can make it happen and test it. Here I am, where evidence, Situba is doing well, with women showing the most amount of leaders. And really, it's just about a mindset and the cultural change.
That's it, because you can really experience imposter syndrome when you are an outcast in a certain group of people.
Yes.
And so that must be, really difficult going into a sort of male-dominated industry and sort of sticking to that path. So well done you.
Thank you. I must say that I think the boys' club has been in existence. I think our being there around the table, it brings a new dimension, new perspective, even from a product generation. By the way, when you do products, you think, well, how does that affect your most buyers? Because women generally throughout the world are more than 50% in terms of the demographics. And in our country, there are about 51% of women, and they are clients. So we need to understand when we design products, where do women fit in as well?
Brilliant. And so, day one of ICE London, what are you looking forward to seeing?
Well, I must tell you that there's been, as I said, a lot of technology. I'm enjoying just connecting with our stakeholders around here, meeting with people that we haven't met with. It's been absolutely amazing and refreshing. There's so much to see. I can't even get around, but I'm enjoying it, just being back again in the mainstream with people under the same roof after such a long period.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for your time. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we bring this meeting to a close?
No, I just want to wish everybody a healthy stay and watch this space. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Charmaine.
Thank you.
So stay tuned, folks. Up next, we have an interview with Kevin Dale, the CEO of eGaming Monitor. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome back to our feature on eGaming Monitor. I am joined by CEO Kevin Dale. Wonderful
Hi.
to have you in the studio.
Lovely to be here. Thank you.
How is the show going for you so
Fantastic. I mean, it's been a couple of years, isn't it, since ICE, and you never really know how much you miss something until it's gone. And so here we are. Yeah, happy to be back.
Glad to have you. Now, you're going to tell us about the state of play in the gaming industry today. Yep. You've got some slides for us, haven't you?
I do, somewhere. They might even pop up if we're lucky.
Yeah, so we're going to get the slides up now, and you can talk us through it.
In general, just as a sort of preamble, it's been the last 2 years since the last ICE have been absolutely massive in terms of the change that's happening out there. And this last year in particular, I'd say it was probably a bumper year, sort of an abnormal year, let's say, and one which, personally, I don't think will happen again. It's, that we're talking a major change structurally within the industry, and you'll see that coming through in the numbers that we'll go into. So, big numbers, bumper year, somewhat some unsustainable numbers you'll see in a couple of the slides in a minute, especially relating to game production and product life cycles on games. It's unsustainable in the sense of the numbers might continue, but underlying how those numbers are arrived at, the strategies from the companies in the value chain that lead to those numbers that you'll see will probably fundamentally change in the next year or two. So, our first slide. On the left here, very briefly, I won't spend too long on the slides. On the left, as eGaming Monitor, what we do is we gather all of the operators, so we go to all the license jurisdictions, we bring down all the operator details, so we have all the root domains, the brands, the groups they belong to, so we have a big database of 3,500 operators out there. And then we also have a big database of all the supply side of the industry, all the guys who are particularly who are here. So the platform providers and aggregators and the studios. And then we have a massive database of all the games. This is just a bit of context, really, for what these numbers mean and how they're gathered. So we have all the games and the game details, including the RTPs of the games, the hit frequencies, multipliers, themes, our own themes, engine, and colors, and so on. So these big databases, and then we draw down from all these operators what position which game is at, on which page, globally. So, the chart you're seeing on the left-hand side here is basically saying that this is the world of the operators. This is all the people that we are effectively targeting as an industry B2B. These are the guys who actually offer the product to the end users. We have sort of 3,500 of these guys, a slightly larger or smaller number depending on whether you're looking at a brand or a root domain. We have around 11,000 URLs for those operators. So we actually have all the pages that they have on their website that relate to games, which is the ones we actually go and find the games, bring them back, and then match them back to the to the actual studio in question. So lots of operators. The slide's gone now, but the studio side, on the studio side, we have 1,300 studio stroke supplier side, 1,300 companies. Approximately 600 of them are pure play studios, people who make content. We then have about 250 who build the platforms that operators use to actually operate their sites, and then we have around 250 who do a bit of both. That's the context. And in this last year, we've probably had about a 10% growth in operators, so about 300 to 400 operators, depending how you sort of define them. So a good year, especially brought on by the fact that there's been a migration during pandemic away from land-based into online, and also the Americas opening up is the two big things. So lots of new operators, which is great. So our industry continues to grow after 25 years, and on the other side, on the supplier side, that's the bigger growth. That's the one that's sort of actually quite startling, really. So we've had a sort of like a 25% growth in things like studios. So there's people who make content, not just slots, but video, bingo, live games, keno games, and so on. So 10% growth on operators, 25% of growth on studios. So there's obviously a lot of people out there saying this is still an exciting industry to be in. The Americas are opening up. Let's get at it, which is great. It's great for our industry. What that, however, leads to, and you see on this next slide here, is you have lots of studios selling their games into the operators, and on average, the number of studios that we're finding games from have gone from 400 to 500. So again, a 25% increase in 1 year in terms of the number of studios producing games that you've found out there in the market. And the number of games has gone from around sort of 16,000 to 20,000 games. So it's an enormous amount of content that's out there. So that's the raw data. And just before I sort of talk about the implications, and you may have some questions and so on, there's one last little slide here is saying, well, despite the fact that you've got 250 new suppliers, of which 150 are studios in this last year, the consolidation of content by whether they are big studios and groups or little studios is very much in favor of the big guys. So lots of new studios coming, but not growing their share of shelf space, if you like, amongst operators as much as the big guys.
And did you want to move on to your next slide?
We can move on to the last one, if you like, yeah.
Yeah. So we've got one more slide there. Brilliant.
So in essence, all of this sort of comes to, brings to the fore the fact that so much more content out. The operators aren't getting rid of content either. They're not replacing games with old games. The list just gets bigger and bigger. The shelf space gets bigger. The supermarket gets bigger, effectively. And so as a result of that, you see things like the product life cycle of your average game very much shortening, which creates issues really when you're looking at the viability of actually launching new games and so on. I suppose that's the core point here. Lots of growth in the industry, but some of this growth, depending where you are on the value chain, especially if you're a studio, has meant that the life cycles are shortening. There are a few exceptions out there, like obviously the big games, the big studios, and some seasonal games and so on. But that's the big message really.
Brilliant. Thank you for that overview. I've got lots of questions related to parts of what you spoke about there, so perhaps we can go deeper into the specificity of some of the points you illuminated. So obviously you mentioned there are more games than ever, but suppliers just keep contributing and joining to the market. Is there simply just too much to choose from today, do you think, when it comes to slots?
I don't think there's too much content. I mean, after all, this will be an industry. The average operator site will, has got 1,500 games nowadays. It's still, if you compare it to a Netflix or a Spotify or an Amazon or whatever, who have, much bigger databases of content, that's sort of the direction this industry is heading to. So it's not more games as being a problem. In fact, the customer loves it. So more games, so if you asked a customer more games, they'd say yes. If you were to ask an operator if they're happy with more game content, they'd say yes, because it satisfies more and more broader breadth of customers that they have. The issue, I suppose, is more one for customers of finding the right content, and recommendation systems and that sort of stuff are sort of still in their infancy, really, in our industry compared to Amazon and Netflix. It's managing that content, and then as a studio or as a content provider, it's managing the processes of getting your content to the top of the page and keeping it there as long as possible. And that entails a whole number of different strategies, such as either producing more of them more frequently or producing higher quality games, for example.
And so with some of the biggest suppliers starting to increase their shelf space, is there any sort of discernible change to what players see in this changing development process?
If you go back to your supermarket analogy, I suppose from a player's perspective, there's a longer scroll bar, which makes it difficult. If you've launched a game and it's in position 800 on the page, you're not going to get a lot of traffic on it, generally speaking. So it comes down to whether you're getting your games, whether the player experience is actually getting sort of collections recommended just for you, or you'll like this, or the Christmas collection, or the Valentine's collection, or the Aztec themed, or the whatever it might be. So yeah, that's where the industry needs to improve, especially on the operator platform provider end, is actually having presenting that content better.
And you mentioned that games are, their life cycles of games are decreasing. Does that mean that we're not going to see another Starburst?
No.
Oh.
I think Starburst is here to stay, to be honest. It's sort of sat at the top for so long, and everybody else has shuffled around underneath it. There are 2 or 3 other contenders for the throne, but they've always been contenders. I suppose the thing with the big releases, and there are some that have hit the top 20 charts. We run the top 20 charts, you probably know, for iGaming Business. The big games are still big games for a reason. They're a reason, and it's not just the fact that they have superb distribution. In fact, you can produce a great game without superb distribution, and it can get lost. In the same way, there are a lot of musicians, I imagine, on Spotify who've never been discovered, but they've probably got absolutely amazing content. So they have great distribution. You need that first and foremost. So blockbusters will only come from the big guys. But to be a blockbuster, you're still competing within the market with other games that are produced from the same company. So microgaming has lots of little studios within it, for example, and each of its new games that it is launching is also competing. It has the same distribution as everybody else, but it's also competing with some pretty hot other studios within the group. So they still have to perform. The games have to be good. So and they blockbusters maybe not quite the size of Starburst, but one level down, yes.
And so do you think that the classic titles are already in the market?
No, it tends to change out probably every 2 to 3 months. There's a bit of a cyclical nature to it. You have sort of medium blockbusters, let's say, games that sort of don't necessarily last all year, but have a good 3 to 6 month innings, I suppose.
And how about variations of seasonal titles? How does that affect suppliers?
The nice thing about seasonal stuff is, there are some companies out there that do seasonal very well. Play and Go, for example, is a good company. These are companies who focus on Easter, Valentine's, Christmas, Halloween, a few others. They do very well in the sense of you can roll them out each year and they will still do well at the same time each year. So they're not like most games where you put them out there, it'll live or die for a few months or whatever, and then it'll be very difficult to resuscitate it. Whereas a seasonal game, you can bring it back at the same time next year. That's the advantage of it. So they probably don't make as big a noise as some of the more normal titles, but they have a life cycle that can be repeated if you remember to bring them out next year.
And what do you think is going to disrupt the industry, in your view?
Multiplayer's been discussed, I think, is one thing. I sort of quite like the idea of the metaverse and so on. Sort of bringing back Second Life and putting it into our industry. It's a long way off, though. However, I quite like the multiplayer concept. That whole crossover between video gaming and real money gaming is the bit that fascinates me. There are lots of business models that work out there, from social casino to video gaming to real money gaming, and the people who actually sort of manage to combine that nicely and achieve revenues that are even outside of actual playing through money on a machine, who get the ancillary revenues of skins, for example, will actually make some money. So and there are few companies moving in that direction. The likes of Funfair Technologies and GE Games and so on.
And you mentioned multiplayer there. So
yep.
Do you think that multiplayer is the panacea?
I don't think it's the everything. The multiplayer is for people who like to either compete with others or to collaborate with others. So bingo works very well as a sort of a collaborative type thing. In fact, jackpots even get shared within the room in bingo, which I quite like in many cases. Multiplayer is also about the competitive side. So, but then there are also people who don't want to collaborate. They don't want any human interaction. They don't want to compete with people. They just want to play their game and zone in, if you like, or zone out of normal existence. So, I think if you align your products and your ancillary technologies that are coupled on top, so tournament and multiplayer play on top of your products, to the motivations that lead people to to want to play the games in the first place. That's the key. That's the key. So, collaborative type functionality for people who want community, competitive type leaderboard. I'm the biggest sort of thing. And jackpot type prizes for people who like that sort of high volatility and competitive nature. But for those who just want to zone out and play a game, multiplayer is not for them, probably.
And do you think that's going to change in the wake of stricter controls in the industry? Unless needed, do you see that changing will... Hang on a minute. Yeah, I'm going to just open with that. How is this all liable to change in the wake of stricter controls, in your opinion?
Restrictions, I mean, the strange thing about regulation is it's changed from being sort of regulating on sort of advertising, publicity, to regulating on knowing your customer and so on, to which is very much sort of operator focused in the past. It's now sort of changed, or not changed, but they've added on this new bit, which is very, which makes life quite difficult, let's say, for the people who make the content. So when regulation hits content, it gets quite complex. The risk for me then, in that piece, if you like, is that regulation has the effect that the product that you can play in a regulated market becomes inferior to the same product you can play in an unregulated market, because the tax is higher, because you can't have this feature and that feature and the other feature and so on and so forth. So whether that feature is jackpots or whether it's auto spin or turbo play or whatever those features are, if you remove those from these products but you allow offshore, let's say, the same product to have all these features and so it has better value and more features, that's where you have issues with channelization and so on. So that's I suppose my piece and my bit on how regulation impacts on the creation part of our industry.
And if a big win is taken out, how does that impact the appeal to players, do you think?
If you were to remove jackpots, you mean? Well, I suppose it goes back to that segment of the market that likes jackpot play, which is a big part. Let's face it. I don't think that's going to be pervasive. I mean, let's face it. Lottery everywhere is generally sanctioned and approved by government, so allowed and green-lighted. They are all about the jackpot, aren't they? So I don't think jackpot on slots necessarily would be the first victim here. And if it were, I'd be surprised, and I'd be in the camp shouting for it not to change.
Thank you for your insights, Kevin. What
Very
are you
welcome.
looking forward to seeing at the show?
Next show, next year.
At
this
London Live.
show.
Yeah,
at this show,
tell us.
I've still not made it round. My feet are still, my feet are still sore, adapting to the ice as it was. It's just as big, pretty much, as it was last year, 2 years ago, more than 2 years ago, which is great to see. It's a bit close to Easter, so I've had to put the kids on hold. It's for another couple of days, but yeah, no, I'm looking forward to making it round as the first thing.
Well, good luck in your foot attire.
Thank you. Yes.
Must choose good foot attire to walk around ICE London. Note to those of you viewing at home. Thank you for joining us in the studio. That was Kevin Dale of eGaming Monitor. So that brings us to the end of our schedule for our first day, dear viewers. Thank you for joining us. And what a day it has been. We saw the comeback of the show, and also we have debuted our first broadcast at ICE365 Live. We've had some fantastic guests in the studio today, including Clarion Gaming Managing Director Stuart Hunter, Ituba CEO Charmaine Mabuza, Simon Thomas of the Hippodrome, Jorgen Crow of LMS Saarland, and Renata Ziles of DVTM. A huge thanks to Yevgenia Derbel of Parimatch and Vladimir Maliki of EvaPlay for their kindness and in joining us in the studio today to remind us of the tragedy in Ukraine. Thanks to David Henwood and Ed Birkin of H2, who helped us gain some insights into the state of play for gaming today, while Kevin Dale, still with me in the studio, has shared some interesting data showing just how competitive the slot sector really is. We're going to be back live again tomorrow from 9 a.m. and we'll be taking another trip down to the Esports arena, and we'll be hearing from the judges over at Pitch Ice, who've been tasked with finding the gaming startups that will disrupt the industry. Also on our fun agenda for you tomorrow, we're going to be welcoming back our partners from Inside Asian Gaming, from Latam Media Group, and the Brendan Brandt Double Act for more updates from Asia, Latin America, and the US. And we've got more big names lined up for you as well. We have Jordan Levin of OpenBet, Charles Cohen of the Department of Trust, and TechOps Matt Davey. There's even a trip into the future with YouGov, Bet Games, and Future Anthem to look forward to. I've been Katie Goldfinch. This has been ICE365 Live. We'll be seeing you again tomorrow.